Hi everyone, welcome back to the 7th module of 9 modules of the Revit 2024 Level 1 training course. Okay, so in this module, we're going to be looking at linking other Revit projects into our main projects. Now, linking projects is important because when we work with multidisciplinary models or with large complex projects, we usually have various teams working on submodels, and ultimately we want to join them or link them together into one master model where we can generate drawings from and produce federated models from. So there's a couple of things to understand when linking projects. We can either link in CAD work and then build off of that in the Revit environment, or we can link in other Revit projects into our own project in order to work in a multidisciplinary fashion, amongst other uses. We can also link models just to use it for reference, for example. But in this particular example, for the purposes of this training tutorial, we're going to be focusing on working between a architectural model that we've been setting up in our previous exercises. So this model of the basic apartment building that we've been putting together. And we've created walls, floors, all the windows and doors, and all the furniture components and plumbing fixtures. And now we're going to be creating a roof truss. But for this, we're going to switch from the architectural space to a structural space. And we're going to do that in a separate Revit project. But in order for us to make sure that everything is coordinated well and aligns in a geometry sense, we want to be linking this architectural model into our structural environment, generate the structural truss, and then save that again and link it back into our architectural model so that we can produce some complete drawings from that. So there's a couple of steps here in the content that I've summarized for you, but I'm going to jump straight into it and show you how we do this step by step. So first, we're going to start a new project, and we're going to use the structural template for this one. Remember, we set up in module 2 or module 3, we set up our Revit options and file locations for our templates. So in my particular case, I am using the New Zealand templates for my structural templates. Oh, actually, I see that my structural template's still set to the British one. That's okay. We'll just use it for now. It doesn't make a big difference anyway. Okay, now in structural templates, things work a little bit different. First of all, the discipline is set to structural. So when nothing is selected in your view, it will show the view properties and it will be set to structural. That means that when we link in some architectural models or MEP models containing these systems components, not to be confused with system families, apologies, these HVAC or mechanical, plumbing or electrical components, then we might not be able to see them in this specific discipline view. So to do that, we're going to switch this to a coordination view later on. But first, I want to show you what happens. Before we start with all of that, let's go and link in our architectural model. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and I'm going to choose Link Revit. All right. When I click on that, it's going to ask me to browse to the folder, and I've already got mine set up. So the one I want to link into is my finished architectural model, which is the entire building without the roof on top. So I bring it in and we can see some things start appearing in our model. Right. Now, if I click on the home view, the 3D view button here at the top, see there's my 3D view and we see nothing except some floors. Now, this seems like the model is incomplete. And if we show the hidden elements, we can see the windows and the doors and the stairs and the furniture, but still no walls. So that might be a bit confusing at first. The reason for that is that we are not seeing it because we are currently on the structural discipline here. So if we change this to coordination, then the rest of the model is suddenly going to appear into the view. And if we change the visual style to shaded, we will see the same components that we saw from our architectural model minus the furniture. So if we wanted to see the furniture, we can change our views to settings to set that, but I don't really need to see that since we're working in the structural space. So all I need to see is basically the walls, the openings, the foundation, and the floors. Okay, so heading back to my level 2 here. Now remember, the levels that we've got set up in the structural model is not aligned with the linked model at all. All right, so I need to go and set that up again. So what I'll do is I'll access one of my elevation views here. I just changed my scale there so things are a bit more visible. And then I'm going to start by moving this level from my structural model to be aligned with the one in my architectural model. Then from the structures tab, I'm going to select level, and I'm going to use the pick tool to pick that level 2 that we've got in the architectural model, so that they are the same. All right. Now, just to tidy things up, I'm going to switch the direction of my level views here. I'm going to drag it so that it lines up with the other views headers. And I'm going to do the same for the end here. I'm going to drag that across and make sure that it ties up nicely. All right. Now, when we move these level line endpoints and these heads, they will all move together like we expect them to. Okay, we can do the same for the grids here. We can create grids by selecting these from our plan view, but I'm not going to go into all of that detail. Basically, what we would like to do here is to just see that underlying model, and we want to create a roof truss that's going to sit nicely across here. Now remember, in our architectural model, we said we don't really have the information on what this roof is supposed to look like. We're going to assume that there is some kind of a monospan single pitch roof running across here. And we're just going to estimate or guesstimate that to be sort of a 10 degree slope, and we're going to base our model off of that. So now that we're here at level 3, which is the top of those walls, we can start modeling in some truss components. What we want to start off with is to create a structural truss system. We can choose to draw in beams individually and create a truss system by beams, but it's going to be easier to use this truss tool. So the truss tool pretty much allows us to create like different types of trusses, and it allows us to create a sketch on what that system looks like. Now, before we start here, one thing I forgot to do is to create some temporary reference lines for myself. So I'm going to use the detail lines, and I'm going to use the pick tool, and I'm going to offset a distance of 350 millimeters, because let's say that's going to be our roof overhang distance, so that I can get those lines. Okay, now that we've got that, let's go back to structures and let's choose that truss tool. And then I'm going to click the line tool to start drawing in where I want to place my truss. And any point here, I'm going to start and I'm going to take it all across to that point over there. Okay. Now this is going to look funny because it's using a truss system that we don't necessarily want to be using. And also it's going to be using, and we can't see that too nicely. Let me show you in this view. It's going to be using these massive profiles here, which we definitely don't need. So what I would like to do is I'd like to go back to the section view, and I'm going to choose edit profile. Okay. Now that we've got access to the profile, you can see I've got the top chord and the bottom chord. So it's quite simple. From here, all I need to do is drag this down. And here, I want to maintain this at 10 degrees, we said earlier. So we can see here we've got the angle. And if we set that to 10 degrees, that's going to bring that line down for us. And if I bring this back to the edge, which is what I need to do, I need to stay within these constraints, then that's going to give me the 10 degrees that I wanted. You see there we've got 10 degrees. Okay, great. So that is a good start. Let's select accept and let's see what happens. It's complaining a bit because of course some things don't fit. This truss is not very realistic yet. We're going to fix that. We're going to use the correct profiles here. So let's start with that. Okay, to fix that, I'm going to click on the beam tool and then I'm going to load a family. The reason I'm doing it this way around is because it's the quickest way to just load the framing family straight into the model. If I use components and I load them, then it's going to complain that it's not a component family. So I use the beam tool, and then I navigate to my New Zealand library. I go to components. Then from here, we can find timber, and we want timber structure, and we want the framing components, and I'm going to use the timber gauged family. Then I'm going to import these 70 by 50 flats, and I'm also going to bring in these 100 by 75 rafter components. Right, so we're loading that in, and I'm going to press escape to exit that command because actually I wanted to edit the truss system. So I'm going to select the truss, I'm going to choose edit type. We're going to create a duplicate of this, and we're going to call this one our truss mono, or whatever we want to call it. We can call that a how truss or a think truss or whatever it is. And then we're going to start selecting those components. So this is the top chord. We want that larger section for the top chord. These are for the vertical web, so it'll be the smaller ones. These are for the diagonal components, so that'll be the smaller ones. And then for the bottom chord, we're again going to use that larger component. We click on apply and OK, and now you're going to see that we're starting to generate something that looks a bit more realistic. Great. Okay, so let's head back to our view. Now, if I access my view, I just want to try and understand why I'm not able to select anything here. Let's close the section view and reopen it. For some reason, I'm not able to select my truss. It's a bit strange. I'm not sure why that is happening. Let's create another view quickly. I'm going to delete this section view, and I'm just going to quickly draw in a new one from here to here, and we'll just bring that back a bit, and I'm able to select it. Weird, but okay. Anyway, doesn't matter. So now we want to clean this up a little bit. So we've got our truss drawn in here, but we can see there's some weird things happening with these members. So once I've got the truss selected, I'm going to choose to remove the truss family. That's going to disassociate that system that we've had, but it's going to retain the elements that were created. And now I'm going to go through and remove those tiny little components that we don't want. And I'm going to extend these to go all the way to the end. Right? So I'm going to take each one of these members, and I'm going to take them and extend them all the way to the center line of those top and bottom chords. And that is because I want to trim these back nicely. I want them to be represented correctly, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that using the reference planes. So quickly move these across. This one. And we're almost done. And then we'll start cleaning them up. For this end member here, I'm going to change that profile type to the larger section. So I want this to be a big one. And also I'm going to move that across. Let's first drag this down to go to the center. And then we're going to move it across so that it sits nice and flush with this end, with this bottom chord here. So let's move that across, tie it in there, unjoin that, and there we go. Nice. Okay, now all we need to do is to clean this up a little bit. So we're going to go to our structures tab. I'm going to choose a reference plane, and I'm going to choose the pick tool. And from here, I'm going to pick the bottom of the top chord and the top of the bottom chord again to create those reference planes for me. Then once that's done, I'm going to select any of these truss elements, and I'm going to choose cut. When I'm in the cut tool, I select the element I want to cut and the cutting plane. All right, and look at how nicely that's cut that element for me. And since we're busy with the cut tool, we can continue to cut the rest of the elements. So you select the element, you select the cutting plane. Make sure you select the element on the side you want to keep, otherwise it's going to delete the wrong segment. So I always select the side I want to keep first, so the inside here, and then the cutting plane. Keep, cut, keep, cut. So we just follow this process all the way through. Same here, same there, and there. Oops, I missed that one, so let me just grab it again. We're going to do the same here, and finally over there, and there. We still have this element overlapping here, which is not great. So I'm going to select the reference plane tool again. I'm going to create one on that edge, and then I'm going to select this one. I'm going to say cut this one on that edge, and there we go. Nice and tidy, our little truss system. So let's look at that in 3D. There it is. That looks pretty decent. And now we want to start creating a copy array of that across our structure. So I'm going to remove the section view, select and delete. Yes, we can delete the view associated with it. And we're going to select our truss. Now, to make things easier for myself, I'm going to create a group from this. So this is just going to group it all together, so that when I select this element, I don't have to select each, or they're all grouped together in one component. So it makes it easier for selection and management. And I'm going to move this all the way back here to the beginning. And then I want to create an array from the start to the end at equal spacing. So to do that, I'm going to use the array tool here. I'm going to say that I want it to be a linear array. I want the number to be, let's say, I don't know, 8. And I want to do this from the first to the last. So my first is here, and my last is going to be here. There we go. 8 trusses spaced equally. So I'm going to press enter to accept that. And let's look at that again in the 3D view. There we go. So now we've got our trusses modeled and they're put in place. So let's say, of course, if I wanted to move these a little bit to sit on top of the wall rather than cut into them, I could do that, but let's assume this is some kind of construction requirement and this is how it's going to be built, and we're going to have these trusses sticking out here a little bit, and we're going to have the roof sitting on top of that. Let's assume that's how it's going to be tied in for the purposes of this example. So we'll keep it like that, and we're happy with our system. So now let's go and save this. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to override the one that I created before while testing, and we're going to call this one O3A STR so that I know that this is my structures model. Now I've got the architectural model linked into my structural model. So when I link the structural model back into the architectural one, are we going to have a circular reference issue or not? The answer is no. Revit is smart enough not to do that. So when we link models together, it will know not to create circular references. So here is the model that we ended up with earlier in the previous module, the architectural one. And now we're going to link in that truss model that we just created. So I'm going to select that one. The positioning is going to be origin to origin. And we're going to click open, and that's going to then create those trusses for me in exactly the correct location where we want them to be. Now that's all great, because if we head over to level 2, it means that if we set this to fine and we zoom in here a bit, we can actually see our trusses. So that's really good. Now, if we wanted to create our roof, we can do that. So remember that we created a 350 millimeter offset for our truss system. So I'm going to do the same here using detail lines. I'm going to offset 350 millimeters from those walls, and I'm going to create my roof footprint directly on that, and I'll cut it flush here on these walls here on the east and west ends, just because we can. So I'm going to go to architecture. From here, I'm going to choose roof by footprint, just like we did in the first test drive exercise. And I'm going to use the rectangle tool to just draw this in for me quite quickly. Now I know that this line, and this line is not going to be the roof slope definition. This one is going to define the roof slope, but we want that to be 10 degrees, remember? And we're going to say accept. Now, let's look at, I probably put this at the wrong level, right? Not so smart of me. So instead of level 1, that should sit at level 2. And if we now go to our 3D view, we should see that nicely fitting in place. One thing, I don't like this style, so let's just change that to a roof generic. There we go, that's more like it. Okay, and we can see our roof fitting nicely in with those trusses. Now, if we select the wall here, remember we can say attach top or base, and if we select the roof, it's gonna bring that all the way up there. Okay, we can do the same on this side. So I'm going to say attach top or base there, and we can do the same on this side. We can say attach the top of the, or base there, and we're going to do the same here just to tidy things up completely. There we go. That is a good result. All right. And if we wanted to see a different view where we don't have everything hidden, we can access this one. Let's go and override the graphics in the view and set these not to be transparent. Okay, and there we go. That is the result that we ended up with. Of course, these don't have to overhang there. They can sit snugly into the wall. I probably didn't think this through too much when I started modeling them, but the point is being able to model trusses and doing that in a linked model, linking it back and making sure they line up the way we intended it to. Whether that is the best architectural design or not is irrelevant. It's about what we intended to do and what the outcome was in achieving that. And then, of course, our roof structure sitting nicely on top of that. So everything lines up perfectly. Okay, that's it for this module. I hope that that helps to explain linking models and coordinating between disciplines. I'll see you in the next module. Thanks. Bye.